first, thanks to all of you for coming today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to come and talk with us about success, and particularly success as it relates to UW-Oshkosh and your experiences. So let's start off by having everybody introduce themselves, and if you can say a little bit about what you do and about your connection to UW-Oshkosh. So let's start with you.
Sure. My name is Craig Culver. I am the co-founder, and currently I'm still the CEO. They haven't kicked me out of it yet, of Culver's Frozen Custard Restaurants, or Culver Franchising. My connection here at UW-Oshkosh is I'm a graduate in 1973, and I've served on the foundation board here, I think, since the year 2000, and still serving and having fun. It's always fun for me, actually, coming back on campus and just walking around. It always makes me feel a little younger, as a matter of fact. So I appreciate being on the foundation board.
That's why you're here so often. I always hear you're on campus. You know?
Yeah. My hair hasn't gotten any darker, however. So.
Thank you.
I'm Sally Wilkie, and I graduated from UW-Oshkosh in 1979. That was a couple years ago, too. So, and then I just, I've been gone from the university for just a couple of years. I worked there for 20 years in the Head Start program. I worked for the Center for Career Development for several years, and then I was the executive director of Head Start. And now I'm a pastor in the beautiful Northwoods, in South Range, Michigan.
We look forward to hearing about that journey.
That's cool.
And
I'm Shahida Govani. I graduated in 06 from Oshkosh, resident of Oshkosh, decided to stay in the area and do undergrad here, and very proud that I did. Then went on to dental school at Marquette, and now I own a small dental practice here in Oshkosh. Happy to be back and serving our community.
Wonderful. Marlo, go ahead.
My name is Marlo Ambis. I'm owner of Agoma Club and Manila Resto here in town. Graduated in 2007 as a music major and a business minor as well. I'm also an Oshkosh resident and happy to have stayed here and have gone to the university and be Titan.
That's why you always have good music at your restaurant.
See? Exactly.
A lot of
Music.
music too.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
musicians I know.
It's fantastic.
That's cool.
So you started
remember that.
So you'd have a venue to play, right?
Yeah, to play,
Yeah, there we go.
have some good music,
Good. Nate.
All right, I'm Nathan Stepanek. I'm currently a student at UW-Oshkosh, so I'm a senior. I'll be graduating in August, so this is my last semester right now. But also I work for the admissions office on campus. I'm interning there, and I do videos, promotional videos there. So I'm just very happy to be able to promote my school while still being in it, so that's kind of cool.
You're like the Facebook guy because
Yeah.
videos are always on Facebook, right on the front of the admissions page. It's awesome.
That's cool.
And you had some big news this past weekend too. Sorry, couldn't resist.
I also just got married on Saturday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I was like, make sure it's still official, so.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Rick Wells, and I'm the Chancellor of UW-Oshkosh. I came here in the fall of 2000, so I'm finishing my 13 years as Chancellor here at UW-Oshkosh, and we started in the 14th year this coming fall. And but I'm not an alum, not a graduate, but I dearly enjoy and feel especially privileged to serve as a Chancellor of this institution. I think it's very special in lots of interesting ways, which I'm sure we're going to find out by just listening to the outstanding things that you all have to tell us about your experience here at Oshkosh and how it's helped you. So I'm really looking forward to this. So
Good. Well, I'll say who I am, just so you know who you're talking to. I'm Tracy Sleiter. I'm an assistant professor of political science here. So I teach courses on mostly European politics and international law, those types of things. I came here in 2006. And one of the ways that I knew this was the right place is in my interview, somebody said to me, this is a place where you're going to really be able to do a lot of cool things and make a difference. Like your voice will be heard. You're not just going to be somebody that's holed up in an office. And that's been extraordinarily true on this campus. So I'm very, very pleased to be here. And of course, pleased to be talking to all of you as well. let's go ahead and start our conversation. As you probably know, the next Engage magazine, which is the alumni magazine, is going to be focused around just the idea of success. So maybe a good starting point for us is to define what success means for each of you. It might be very different things. So let's maybe start. Does anybody want to start? Or you don't always have to go in a circle here. But you look very good. Yes.
For me, success is just like the positive outcome of like a goal that you have. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's like the outcome you were expecting, but like a positive outcome. So like, for example, with me, when I do videos for the admissions office, obviously my goal is to inspire people to come to UW-Oshkosh. But even if I can just get them to think about the college process in the right way, like how they should be touring schools, what questions they should be asking, for me that's still success because it's still a positive outcome of like what I've been doing. So.
Well, you know, there's success in business, and then there's success in life as well, and many times I believe they're just like that. And of course, in business, when you have success, to some people that may mean making a lot of money or making money, period. But that isn't always what it is, and that brings me to to enjoyment and happiness. I think if you can find enjoyment and happiness in what you do, whether it's in your work life or personal life or both, then you've found success. But you've got to work at success every day, because success will go away on you if you don't stay engaged in whether it's a business or a personal involvement or a relationship as well. You must stay engaged in it to keep it successful. It's hard work. It is.
I think what you said is really important, that they go hand in hand. Like I find when I'm the most, in tune with my husband and with my kids, and when things are going well there personally, you feel like you're personally fulfilled and those relationships are meaningful, then anything can happen.
It seems like everything else will be positive, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I want to follow up on success takes work, because my 2-second bumper sticker slogan for success is getting back up. Recovering, learning what you can learn from what didn't go well, and then getting back up and going for it again.
Because we will fail.
Yes.
We will make mistakes.
I have a friend for whom that is his definition of success is being certain to have plenty of failures so that he would learn things and ultimately be successful.
I don't wish for a lot of failures.
Well, there's a lot to learn. I mean,
I know there is.
I don't like how it feels. I don't like how it feels to fail, but I love all of the things that come out of it. And the other thing is that sometimes you walk into a wall and fall down. And so it's the wall makes you turn a different direction. And again, exciting and good things can happen along the way there. But I do my own personal one is taken, again, I read a lot, taken from Frederick Buechner, talking about vocation. And he says that vocation, the true vocation is where my deepest desire meets the world's greatest need. And so for me, I see success as being able to use the passion that I have for people to meet a need in the world. And that's success.
Wonderful. Shahida, what do you think?
So I have to say I'm kind of similar in some of those thoughts. My biggest idea when I try to define success personally would be anything that you could do that you could look yourself in the mirror and say that you did that with integrity. I love being a dentist and working with my hands, and I get a lot of gratification from my patients when I get them out of pain, or I fix something, or when I make a crown that looks beautiful. But if I worked at Taco Bell or was a garbage truck driver, to me it doesn't really matter what you do if you do it with integrity and you go to work or to your home, wherever you are, and you give your whole heart and you try to give 120%. To me, that's really successful. Even like you were saying, if you fail or times are hard, you know, starting a small business right out of school was difficult, but I feel really proud of that. But there are many other things in my life that I'm proud of too that were just as much hard work. You know, like you were saying, some things you gain financial or business productivity, but other things are more personal or more emotional gain, and I think that those are just as equally as important. So I think 120% and being able to look yourself in the mirror, that to me is the highest level of success.
What about you, Marla?
Great stories from everybody. I would have to say success for me is being able to provide a space for people to enjoy two different things that I'm very passionate about, food, music, and especially being able to share my culture with the community here. I mean, being a resident and growing up here, my family and myself, we always thought about, what does the community need? And we thought that, by being able to share our culture, food, our taste of music, our way of life and everything is something that we wanted to do. I mean, we could have chosen, go to Appleton or Green Bay, maybe some other day, but right now we wanted our home base.
I'll help you
to be here.
franchise that.
Yeah? All right. We'll talk. Definitely.
It's interesting because, sometimes I think when you have a certain kind of calling, whatever that is, a lot of in the so-called helping professions in teaching and ministry and so on, you get a real sense of satisfaction and feeling successful by watching other people that are important to you, that you care about, be successful, And it's kind of interesting, at least three of us in the room have restaurant roots, and our restaurant, like yours and like your many ones and actually I think Culver's is a really good example of franchising, this feeling of watching people come in and really enjoying themselves. I mean, food's very important, and setting up an environment, it's like the community living room. Our restaurant is a place like that, they call it a great good place, and watch people, truly enjoy themselves. It's very fulfilling. I mean, it's hard work, and you can make mistakes, and some people don't have such a good time, and all that kind of stuff. And we got involved recently with the restaurant and hotel and convention center downtown. And I was down there in the inside part of the restaurant with some colleagues who were having a meeting, and I looked outside on the patio deck that's out there, and there were about 10 people at a table. It ranged in age from probably 80 to 3 or 4 years old. They were having the most wonderful time. I mean, you could see them genuinely laughing, having in the setting that was there for them is what created that opportunity for them to really have a good time. And I think, for people in higher education like Tracy and I, just hearing you guys and seeing what you're doing and so on, it makes us feel good. I mean, we always feel that we have a little role in some of this, but I think for a lot of people that do what we do, watching other people, our alums and students, successfully accomplish things, and I think that's why commencement is such a phenomenal experience for us. It's a very ritualistic, but it's very rewarding, and it keeps you charged up year after year after year, no matter how challenging or tough things are. So to me, being successful is having other people that are close to you, in our case with our students, but also in your family, that your spouse is successful, your children, that you have some role in that. Some of that's hard work on both ways. It's not just the children, they work on us too, right? And the wife works on the husband to help the husband grow and be more successful, that kind of thing too. So that's how I'd answer that.
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything that you said. I think so much of it is about.
You have to, Tracy.
Yeah, I have to. That's right. I mean, whatever you say, Chancellor Wells. We're in your house.
You're in my. This is the official residence, so it's not technically mine, but I'm residing.
You're the one with the garage door opener,
That's
so
right.
No, there's. I'm an example of the importance of UW-Oshkosh. And maybe I'm coming at it backwards. You might say this is backhanded compliment. I just wanted to do things for people. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to work at a volunteer program or at the prison or somewhere. And at every turn, you know, I was told, not without a social work degree, not without some kind of a degree. Well, you know, I grew up in the days when the sons were put through college, but at least in the family that I came from. And so it wasn't sort of a given that when I graduated from high school that I would automatically go to college. But in order to do what I really, really had a passion for then was I had to go. And there was a nice accredited social work program at UW-Oshkosh, and that
did it.
that was good. That was good. And that bachelor's degree, and I will say the field experience, the opportunity to get in the community in 2 different settings. I went straight from my first field experience into my first job. I was employed by the people that I had done my field experience with. So.
Well, this is sort of a great sort of next step for our conversation. Let's talk about the role that the university has played in each of your career paths, as different as they are. Maybe should we start with a current student? We'll talk about, because you're obviously passionate about this university.
All right. Just UW-Oshkosh has just presented me like a lot of opportunities to do the things that I love. Before I came to UW-Oshkosh, I was very passionate about making like videos and music, and those are my major and minor: radio, TV, film, and music industry and recording. So first off, just being able to learn and actually like know more about that craft so that I myself can get better at it has been fantastic enough. But as if the university hadn't given me enough already, they also gave me the opportunity to start practicing and actually doing that for internship and a job. So to be able to take what I actually learned in the classroom and then actually start using it already before I graduate has just been amazing. And to have that opportunity presented to me is something that I'll always be grateful for, because it's helped me grow so much already.
Yeah.
So,
What is your plan for after
after
the semester?
after the semester, I'd like to try to keep doing what I've been doing with promotional videos in some way, shape, or form, whether it's for like university or a business. Eventually, I'd like to start my own production company that does freelance work for video production, because I think it's an important thing to be able to promote your business with a video or anything like that. So eventually, that's my long-term goal.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks. Who's next?
I can go.
Go ahead.
So I feel like Oshkosh was huge for my development. I come from a family that no one on either side had went to college, like cousins or aunts or uncles. No one really graduated. And my father came here from Uganda as a refugee in the 70s. So there's very little like education component like growing up. My mom was really supportive. But I decided to go to Oshkosh so I could work and save money and see how college went. I was a little bit nervous. And I feel like it was a great place. Doing undergrad there, doing a biology degree before going on to more doctorate level training, I feel like it was a huge blessing. I got research opportunities that if I would have went to a larger school, I would never have gotten. I traveled to Boston one semester with my mentor, Dr. Holton, at the time, and got to present research at a national meeting. Things that as an undergrad, who had never even been on an airplane, really cool experiences, kind of like the energy that you possess. I felt that same way, like lots of great energy, and that I was able to have experiences that I wouldn't have been able to have at other universities, that doors kind of opened that wouldn't have even been allowed to be open. So I feel like that was a huge blessing. And then when I went to Marquette, I was a bit nervous that possibly these students that came from really expensive, fancy name schools, and drove fancy cars, that I would never be able to compete or do as well. And I did exceptionally well at Marquette, and got the same academic scholarships they did and did just fine. And I really think a lot of it was because undergrad was really good, and I learned good study skills and maybe had more confidence like you have because of those opportunities, that it was an awesome choice. So probably one of the best choices in my path.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. What about you, Craig?
I've got a degree in biology, and I'm thinking about going to Marquette next semester.
Dentist, business owner.
So I didn't follow my educational path, although it's an emphasis on botany, and I do love my gardens and things like that we do have and play around and with native plants and things. But you know, Oshkosh was good to me. I was just proud to get a degree, honestly. I was the first one in our family to get a degree as well, and I just thought that was a pretty cool thing. And I was proud of myself for accomplishing that. It took me 5 years, however, it did. But you know, my family's been in the restaurant business since I was a small child, and you know, I just ended up gravitating there, even though I didn't want to go there. I ended up going there. But Oshkosh, getting away from home, developing skills, people skills that maybe I didn't have before. I did become a better student as I aged as a student. I matured. It helped me in all of those ways, and probably any university could have done that. But I truly enjoyed my time here. The friends that I got to know, and yes, there were beer bars and things like that. And I think there still is there not? I don't even know. And that was, no, the social aspect of it as well was fun and a learning experience for me too. But I'm very proud to be a graduate of UW-Oshkosh. I talk about it all the time. I get the opportunity to speak publicly, probably way too much. And you know, I'm always very proud to say I got my degree at UW-Oshkosh. I'm always very proud to say that. So I'm doing a little marketing out there. I'm doing a little promoting as well when I get out to publicly speak.
Well, and we love it that you keep coming back.
Well, thank you. It's
That's
always a joy.
fantastic, and your
Thank
service on the foundation board too, really fantastic. What about you, Marlon?
Well, I think for me, with like my experiences at you know, UW-Oshkosh, would be big things, relationships that I've developed. You know, not with just the students, but also, you know, faculty and the chancellor. It's been great just to be able to be involved in so many different things. Like I said earlier, my major was music, and I was involved in a lot of different performance groups there. The chamber orchestra, the symphony orchestra there, and I was even a part of the steel drum program, the very first that was established there at the university. You know, so. But you know, as time progressed too, my idea of owning my own restaurant kind of came together, and it allowed me to take, you know, courses outside my major and everything like that, and was able to develop and get involved in those different groups too. So I too, you know, when people say, you know, where did you graduate? Or I have a lot of friends and family that are from out of town. I go, oh, so you go to Madison? I'm like, no, I go to Oshkosh, you know, so very proud of that.
You know, when I graduated, a friend of mine asked me to be in his wedding, be the best man in his wedding on the same day as graduation. And I said, well, you know, I guess I can do that. I don't have to cross the stage, you know. Always regretted that. Oh, I've regretted that. And he gave me an opportunity, I don't know how many years ago, to cross that stage when Chancellor in UW-Oshkosh gave me a doctorate degree from here. And I'll tell you, that was a very proud moment for me. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for accepting it.
I'm not sure that this fits, but this is where I'm going to say it. I had the privilege not only of being at commencement, but being on the stage, because I was the student speaker for the senior class.
I heard.
That was
I heard you were awesome.
I was thinking about the student groups. You know, I was thinking about the social work interest group and the Alpha Delta Mu, the Social Work Honor Society, and some of the other things that I got to participate in, and how I was hanging out at the alumni office long before I graduated. But that was amazing to be a part of that whole process. And it is to date still the largest group I ever spoke in front of. I did a lot of public speaking after that. That was a great opportunity.
You know, that's one of the very distinctive things about UW-Oshkosh. We don't have celebrity speakers.
Yeah.
We always pick a student and a faculty member to give the talks. And I can tell you, after every commencement, I have several parents come up and say how much they appreciate hearing from a student, from the class, and a professor, and how much they're not that crazy about having a celebrity speaker, you know. And they do year in and year out, right, Tracy? You too. Tracy's done the commencement speech. Just a phenomenal job. And we had Anthony Anthony Miller did the one this time, and it was particularly special because Anthony's an African American young man from Milwaukee, and you know, as you say, there's 6,000 people there. There had to be 300 people from Milwaukee sitting in the because we always have a section for the speakers that sit there. And he gave a tremendous speech, like all years. And it was everything's just an odd to beat. And what his aspiration is to be a motivational speaker. So I don't have to tell you that part. And so he starts as part of his speech. He named 5 young men, and then explained that these were all young boys that he went through school with that had been shot to death. Oh. And that's just to show the odd that he and others had to beat. And at the end of his speech, 6,000 people came to their feet. Yeah, cool. And so I remember Tracy getting up and saying, well, Anthony, you know, I think motivational speaking is your career. I'd like to be your agent. I'll only take 60% of your fees.
There's a
but
calling.
It really is wonderful, the commencement setting. And Tracy, what has Oshkosh, and I'll answer my own question too, what has Oshkosh done for you, your success? What has it done for you?
A lot. I mean, this is my first job out of graduate school. This is, where I had a lot of interviews after graduate school, and I was headed out to private schools and places like that. And this is the only place I stepped on campus, and I met my now department, and I was like, this is it. I feel really comfortable here. It reminded me of my college experience. I met the students. They reminded me of me. And so that was, it was no decision at all when the then dean called me and offered me the job. It was all I could do to be like, yes, I'll think about it and I'll get that. Because I already knew that I was going to do it. I already knew. And I'm from Minnesota, so we really wanted to be in the Midwest, and all of my other interviews had been on the East Coast. This wasn't right. But after I got here, I work in, I'll say this, the most amazing department on campus, I think. Who my colleagues are my best friends. That's just luck, right? And people who inspire me every day. I meet our students. A lot of things that you all have said, especially when you were talking about you're proud to be from here. And no, I didn't go to Madison, right? I came from here. And seeing the students being successful and so passionate about this place and ready to work really hard. You don't have to go to Madison. We're going to take care of you right here. We're going to give you an amazing experience. You're going to be able to do things. You're going to have all of the preparation that you're going to need. So that's been great. So life in the department is awesome. I've also been really privileged to work with our new University Studies program, which is our reform of general education. So a lot of what you were saying about your first year, that you're not a biologist now, right? But what college gave you was an introduction into sort of a whole different social realm. And how do I study? How do I live on my own? How can I be a success coming from wherever I'm from? And so that's been a lot of my focus here with the University Studies program. But just getting the chance to take students abroad and to work with students on research and to see what they can do, pretty amazing. It's more than I actually thought I was going to be. You envision a role for yourself. You think, oh, well, I'm going to be a faculty member and I'll spend a lot of time in the library and I'll, wear a lot of tweed and but I spend a lot of time in those things. And it's turned out to be completely not that, right? It's turned out to be far better than I could have ever hoped it would be, and I say that very, very honestly. So I'm very thankful every day that this is where I landed.
This is, I think that's one of the thinking back in my own interview coming here 13, 14 years ago. One of the special things I think about Oshkosh that we discovered together and I think built, it was always there, and I think we built it together. There are people in our community, whether they're faculty or administrators or students, for the most part, respect each other and want to learn from each other. So faculty learn from the students. So it's not just the students, the faculty teaching the students. You learn a lot from students, having never left higher education myself. I'm a first generation college grad too, but I just never left. I stayed here all the way through. And there's a real, that's a real specialness, because that creates a real academic community, because everybody that comes into our community has something unique and something special, and a knowledge that someone else doesn't have, or a perspective somebody else doesn't have, that you can learn from. So it really is a learning community in its sense. It's not just the professor, spilling all the knowledge into the students. And so that dynamic, I think, was always here, and I think we've really worked on that. And I think the University Studies program, which is one of the most major transformations of the country of general education, when you look at how it's being done, how the faculty are doing it, that's one of the premises it operates on. We learn from each other, and we learn from our alums, because our alums are going to serve as mentors for our students. We learn from people running agencies, because we have a group approach to learning. And I think that's one thing that this campus has given me, a real awareness of how important it is to learn from each other. And for me, what Oshkosh did, sometimes you wonder. I'm not, in all honesty, a especially religious person, but I do believe in some kind of higher power out there, because how do you land where you land? And when you're fortunate to land in a place that you really feel that you grew in these really fundamental and dramatic ways, there has to be something special when it can't just be randomness, can it? That kind of thing. So, for me, coming here, I've been doing this a long time, 34 years or something of that sort, so almost 30 years in higher education before coming to Oshkosh. And I remember coming here too, and just feeling that sense of, I think I really belong here. And it was really an interesting feeling, because I was very concerned, because when you move, right, typically you have family, so they came, my wife and son came, and they went and looked around the community and went to the 2 high schools, and we met back at the hotel. Actually, the hotel we renovated now, remember it at that time, it was starting on its way down, and so I asked them right away, so how did it go? Because, it was really, because like you, it was like, I really hope they offer me a job. So they liked it a lot. Christy said the people are so engaging and friendly, and I always like to tell this story. The first time I get a chance to get it on film was, I got the job as chancellor and the offer because of my son, our son, who's Chris, who at the time was a rising sophomore. We were in Indiana, and he's 6'3", 300 pounds at that time, and he was quite a good shot putter and a football player. And when he went to Oshkosh North, Coach there, Jorgensen, who's an Oshkosh alum, one of the best high school coaches ever in football in the state of Wisconsin, was the coach at North. And Christy said, well, we went to North High School, and this great big guy came and took our son away, and they put me in the principal's office, and I'm looking, it's like 40 minutes, and finally they brought him back. Well, it turned out they needed a left tackle. So we go back, and then I got the exciting call, and I wasn't as good as you, I just said, yes, I'll take it. and I thought, well, I did a great job, it's all about me. I got this job. My family really wanted to come here. So it was in the Northwestern on a Friday. They announced it, and we were in Terre Haute, Indiana, and the first 4 or 5 phone calls, and that was another thing, people called us to the house for my son. What is this? It's about me. It's not about me. But it just brought together for me, 30 years at that time of experience, and things that I had learned over the years, a lot of times from mistakes, sometimes from success, and it just kind of knitted together. And this position really does require you to, pull together everything you've learned, and really requires you to listen more deeply and to engage everybody in the chancellorship. It's not just the chancellor, it's everybody. They're all part of it, particularly the leaders, the student leaders, and faculty, alums, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to get that part in, because we want to make sure you all understand we learned a ton from you, a ton. But we don't always admit it.
Well, let's hear more stories. I love it when we can get something, sort of big and a life story. So think in your life, and think of maybe one moment where you felt, gosh, this is it. Like, this is success. This is success, and however you define it. Like, tell me a story about that. Like, just some little slice of life. It doesn't have to be, well, when I won the Nobel Prize, I was like very successful. But you know, it could be anything. Just yeah, I'm sorry, I took your Nobel Prize story, not that one. So think of, do you have a moment that springs to mind where you just felt that sort of content, like, this is it, this is what I was meant to do, or that moment where you knew, this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
I got two.
All right.
So the first one is just like this general success, and it made me feel awesome and great or whatever. So I was going to a movie on campus in Reeve. So I forget what movie it was, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm heading up to the movie theater, and the person at the front, like, you know, they asked for, like, you know, my card, swiping out the popcorn, all that stuff. And then they stopped and was like, hey, just 1 second. I just want to let you know that your video blogs are the reason why I came to UW-Oshkosh.
Oh,
So,
yay.
like that just like struck me, and I was like, wow, like to actually know that something that I made like affected somebody that much that they were like, oh, this is where I want to be, and that was just amazing, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. The second was just kind of more like when I felt most in my element, I guess. Recently we decided to do we do music videos every now and again as promotion, and ever since I started working there, I'd always say, you know, like, hey, you know, like, I can write music. Maybe someday we'll do an original song. You're like, oh yeah, okay, we'll do that someday. So we finally did it this last semester. So I finally got to be able to work with fantastic student artists and just be able to write the song and be able to put it all together. And it hit me when we were doing a big group filming shoot, and we had a bunch of people in Colf, and I was just like had people helping out, and I was running the camera, and I just like stopped for a second, like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it's just amazing to be in that moment and be like, wow, this is like me actually living out like my dream of doing this stuff, and it just felt awesome. I think I kept talking about it most of the time. My now wife was getting probably pretty irritated because I just kept talking about it the whole night.
And do you have people coming up to you singing the song, you know? Like,
Some people do. So, yeah, people say it gets stuck in their head, and that's good.
Marlon, what do you think?
Well, I think for me, it's when we had our official grand opening. It was September 8th of last year. Well, as you know, there's a lot of different things that you have to go through in order to get something like a business operating and everything like that. So just overcoming all those obstacles that were along the way, you know, this 20-something going to these banks, being like, hey, I want to, you know, open up this restaurant here in Oshkosh. You know,
Here's the money.
yeah. But you know, I kept those letters from the banks that, you know, said, you know,
That
we're
said
sorry.
no?
Yep.
You're not doing business with them either, are you?
No.
I remember.
Why is it all restaurateurs, when they first get started, remember the banks that all the banks
Yeah.
that turned them down? That's in our family too.
Yeah. But you know, it's just you know, staying persistent and not taking no for an answer, and you know, eventually found a bank that believed in our vision, and we're happy that we're able to be, you know, in the community
Manila
and everything
is
like that.
beautiful. And the
Thank
other
you.
thing is,
Thank
you
you.
just did it with great style.
Thanks.
You make sure it's a gorgeous restaurant menu, but the whole setting you create there is just beautiful.
I
Thank
feel
you.
like you're in a big city when you're in there.
You are.
Every
Yeah.
time I go in there, I'm
Very
like, wow,
artsy.
this feels like a big city restaurant. But it's,
And it's warm and welcoming.
Is it open for dinner or is it open for
We're
lunch?
lunch also.
Because I have a couple more days here, so.
All right.
I
Yeah.
want to check that
You gotta
out.
go.
Yeah.
It's great, great place.
I think another thing that's great about, you know, or any line of work is just hearing people, you know, telling you, you know, thank you for doing something like this in the community, and thank you for sharing your culture with everybody, and you know, it gives you that, you know, gratification.
That's what makes it special, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, sure
Yep.
does.
who's next? Who wants? We've got another moment.
I can go. So I guess for me, I feel like it's more like of a general feeling of that moment, maybe in the last year to year and a half since the business is doing well, and kind of like you said, when banks tell you no, or people say, oh, you're going to do that from the ground up, you know, yeah, right. And then when it works out, that it works out okay and it's going great, that's a really good, warm feeling. But my favorite thing is like when patients bring me things. Like I had a lady who brought me a cheesecake. Like as a dentist, I didn't like my dentist that much. I mean, I liked him, but not like I'd make him a cheesecake. So when people like bring us cheesecake, or a woman brought like a handmade crocheted washcloth people do really generous things, and that generous, like, heartfelt, like, appreciation is just so amazing. That means more to me than any amount of money. That's the coolest part. And then, like, the stories, you know, we're sharing stories. I love when patients share stories that maybe they shouldn't. I had a little boy, I always ask him what's new, how's your week at school? And I leaned back and he's like 5. I'm like, so what's new? And he's like, well, don't tell Dad, but Mom's pregnant. She found out today. So, like, that's my favorite part about my life. Like, I love that they share. They tell you all these amazing stories.
Stories
Yeah.
come through, though.
It's amazing.
Crazy for a story. You got your hands in my mouth.
See, I know. Exactly. So,
Great stuff.
but those are the little blessings. Yeah.
You know, I mean, talk about blessed. I've just had many amazing experiences like that. And, you know, today I guess I just want to talk about what's nearest and dearest. When I was 7 years old and my cousins and siblings would be at Grandma's house, we'd be out on the front porch and I'd line them all up and put on my dad's sport coat and his hat, and I'd be the preacher, because of course there weren't women pastors in those days. And so in order to be a pastor, I had to be a man. And so I played church with my siblings. And I will, you know, tell you that I was very bossy. I can't do that today with my real parishioners. I don't get away with that at all. But it was always sort of in there. But I've always also responded to a call of some kind, you know, to go and do something. And so I remember experiences like when one of my kids from the youth center committed suicide. And then I remember having worked with staff and training staff and empowering staff so that 2 of the staff I had broke up a suicide pact. And I'm friends with those grown, not the staff I'm friends with too, but those grown kids. And they're raising their own children now, and you know, things like that. But ultimately, for me, it was after the red stole was put on me, and I stood, and the bishop said, I now declare that Sally Wilkie is an ordained minister of the Church of Christ. It just,
Proud moment.
it just doesn't get any better than that. You know, I mean, baptizing the twins, that was cool, but you know, it just,
Yeah. Thank you for
it's the
sharing
most
that.
recent and it runs deep.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. What about you, Craig?
It's all about people. And, you know, I get the opportunity, since, you know, we're a larger organization now, and you get the opportunity to touch a lot of people in a positive way or negative way. And obviously it's my goal to touch everybody in a positive way and motivate them in such a way that's good for them, good for me, good for Culver's. But when I really get a tingle, when something really touches me in a way, is when somebody, a customer of ours, comes up to me and tells me about one of our people that just went out of their way to take great care of them. And I you know, for a leader being, you know, I don't know whether I'm a leader or not, but when you're in a position that we're in, that I'm in, and when somebody tells you that, and you may have had just a little bit to do with that, it touches you in a very, very positive, emotional way. And you know, that's what I believe our responsibilities are. All of our responsibilities are to make a difference with the people around us. We just did a ribbon cutting in Lee's Summit, Missouri. It's a St. Louis suburb, and you know, I went down. I usually go to these, and I get my opportunity to speak, and came back, and the mother of the general manager sent us a letter back, and she was, you know, just touched in such a way, not necessarily about me, but about the whole team, and how proud she was that her son, the general manager, was part of the Culver's organization. You know, that
Amen.
just, those are successful moments, I believe. And, but as I said before, it doesn't stop there. You know, you got to continue to work at it, work at it, work at it.
It's interesting because it took me a while to, what I think I heard you say, Greg, is that, you know, when people come up and they compliment you in a way for something that you really had a little bit to do
just
with,
a little
what
bit.
was important. I always found myself initially, until I really started understanding what that meant. So, it's, you know, thank you, but, you know, I just played a small role in that, and then keep going into all that. And I finally realized that what they embody in the position, and I always tease Mr. Culver when we gave him his honorary doctorate. I have to tell this story quickly and I'll get back to the point.
He always gets off the point.
I always get off the point.
I'm
That's one of the things
excited.
about being
Let's hear
successful. You can't be too routinized, right? So he gets his honorary doctorate, and then you all know after commencement, I always go down in the gym saloon where they have the punch and cookie.
I did say honorary doctorate before, did I not, or did
It was the world of hard knocks doctorate.
Yeah.
That's kind, right, Tracy?
True.
We've got the other kind. So we go down, and there's this place, you know, we set up for photographic opportunities with the chancellor. You got all my gowns on and all that, and then people usually flock over there. So in this particular commencement, Mr. Culver goes down and spent some time down there, and so I'm all set up, ready to go. Nobody. No one's coming over to get their picture, and I'm looking around. Over in the other corner is a big crowd. Little kids, grandmas, everyone coming up, talking to him, getting his autograph. And at that moment, I dubbed him the Ronald McDonald of Wisconsin. But no, the point is, right? No, the point is, people associate all the excellence that they experience from all the people that make Culver's go, or UW-Oshkosh go, and when they see you, they're complimenting the whole show. You're just, and you've got to accept it that way. I quit saying, oh, I only had a little piece in it, which I did, because they weren't just talking about me. They were talking about the whole operation, and that really makes you feel good.
Sure does.
You achieve that level of excellence that's recognized that way.
But and give yourselves lots and lots of credit. Seriously, the leader, the person at the top, always sets the tone. And I've been places where I walk out saying, I don't know who their CEO is, but they're not learning the right stuff. I mean, that's pretty judgmental, but I just think
Well, trust me, we still make plenty of mistakes.
Oh,
and
yeah, well,
have plenty of challenges
that's
as well.
that's all in there. But when you have happy faculty and educated students and people are grateful and they crowd around him instead of you, then you're doing something right.
It's interesting, you know, I think about this in the kind of organizations and universities, and I really, you know, I don't overdo the restaurant thing, but I really believe restaurants have a lot in common with universities. But what happens is, like, if you think of the story I told about Greg, he was in the middle. And I think when you think of the leaders that envision themselves, and the leadership is really a connection between people, and it's about people and relationships, you're really in the middle. You know, if you're perceived to be on the top, trust me, you're not doing a very good job
Right.
in university,
Right.
right? You've
Right.
got to be perceived,
In the
and in
middle.
reality, be part of the middle. That you've done the work, so to speak, or you understand, or you appreciate the work, the essential work, or the mission of what that organization is, right? And I think that's part of it. So when you get those
Yeah.
kind of compliments that come from people that have no vested interest, they're not employed in the institution, they have every reason to be critical because you're supposed to be serving them, and they say they send you letters and so on. Those are really, really special moments. And in my one for me, in your question, Professor, you know, it is about people, but it's also about place. And I remember coming to Oshkosh and interviewing for the job, and how struck, as I told you earlier, I was with the students I met and the faculty and the staff, and just the feel of the people and the relationships between each other. Because you how people relate to each other, not just how they're relating to you as a candidate, right? And I knew about the reputation of Oshkosh, and Chancellor Penson's the one that got me interested in the position, because I met him somewhere before, 10, 15 years before I ended up coming here, and that's when I looked into it. But what really struck me was how the campus looked. it looked like it got caught in a cocoon in the 1960s. I couldn't believe it. I said, it doesn't fit. The look of the place, the buildings, it stopped somehow.
And it did.
Well, it did. It wasn't just UW-Oshkosh. I don't want to pick on that. A lot of our comprehensive universities had that issue, and there are lots of reasons for it, but that's not the point. So one of the things, I've always, and I think it comes from being brought up in a restaurant, I think it comes from marrying art. My wife's an artist. I've always been conscious about place, what it looks like, what it feels like, and people deserve, particularly in a university or a restaurant or a dental office, they deserve, or that's why I was complimenting your place. They deserve the best place to be with each other, to be together, and to learn or eat or whatever it is they're doing, right? And I said, I think I can really, because Indiana State had a great mentor in John Moore, and we did a lot there related to enhancing their facilities too. And when I remember someone, I think it was Dale Feinauer, Professor Feinauer, saying, why would you want to come to Oshkosh? We've checked you out, and a lot of things we think we need to do, you've already done there. And I said, that's exactly why I want to come. I know how to do those things. I know I can help here. I know there are things here that I can be helpful with, because we had to face them at my former institution. So my special moment, and actually it's kind of a joke in some quarters, I would start off a lot of my talks or lobbying one thing or another. Do you know that UW-Oshkosh hasn't had a new freestanding academic building
1971.
in 1970 since 1971? So my special moment was when we dedicated Sage Hall. And we had gotten approval for whatever it was, $45 million building, and we did the dedication, and it's just a phenomenal building. And I thought, wow, that was really fulfilling. We did it. We overcome something that was important, because the people deserved a lot better place given the quality of the people that were involved in UW-Oshkosh. So that was my special moment.
Yeah, no, that's.
Then I said at that meeting, we haven't had a new academic building since 2011.
And speaking as a resident of Sage Hall, right? Yeah, now it's very posh in there. It's so fantastic. Like, everything is great. I think one of the things that we've all kind of been, in one way or another, talking about that critical to success is the sense of community, right? Whether it's in a restaurant, being part of a restaurant in your community, or creating that sense of community. When I think of Culver's, honestly, I think of soccer teams and baseball teams, because you go into Culver's and it's a sea of uniforms, and we were just there last night after a soccer game, right? Like, it's a community place, and people bringing you presents.
It's cute.
It's adorable, and it makes you feel connected to this place and to whatever it is and whatever it's going to become. And I think we've all have had that experience surrounded with, or sort of fostered by UW-Oshkosh in some way. So I think that's pretty amazing. Community's at the center of this, and it's, I think still at the center of everything that we're doing on campus and all the initiatives that are going on campus. Community is still it. Let's shift just one more time here, and let's think about the best piece of advice that you've ever been given. Right? You're all successful in very different ways. And what is the best piece of advice that anybody has ever given you to help you sort of go through your life? And I'll say something that my mom continues to say, and it still resonates with me every day, and it sounds a little ridiculous, but she says, Tracy, you gotta be a friend to make a friend. And she says that probably on a weekly basis. It applies to anything. Well, you want to be successful, you gotta be a friend to make a friend. And that's something that guides how I teach, it guides how I relate with everybody, and it guides how I interact with my own children and what I want to teach them. That is something that makes me feel that's core to who I am. You gotta be a friend and make a friend.
My dad always said, Craig, you gotta spend $1 to make $1. Until I was spending too much, and then he says, what are you doing? But my father's given me a lot of advice. One of those things was back when we owned the Farm Kitchen Resort in the 60s and 70s, and really, again, I didn't think the restaurant was going to be my life. But he said to me one day, and I don't even know what we were talking about, but he said to me, Craig, you never cheapen a product. And that's pretty easy to do for us in our business. We can tweak our custard mix or our Butterburger formula and stuff and make it a little cheaper, and you probably wouldn't notice it. But I've always said, if I do it once, I'll do it again, and I'll do it again when commodities go up and so on and so forth. And that, that principle, what my dad told me, I mean, it stands tall with me. And I even said that in a silly commercial, as a matter of, but it does. That's just hold on to what you've got. Hold on to the quality. And that can resonate throughout whatever we're talking about, not just food, but whatever. We can make it better. We can. And so that's a great piece of advice that that my father gave a long time ago, and I'm holding on to it. He didn't have a college degree. He barely got through high school, as a matter of fact.
What do you think?
I have two. One would be like my mom. Whenever I was nervous about doing college or taking out loans and doing these things, she'd always say, well, you have nothing to lose, and you'll always wonder what if.
Yeah.
And that's very true. I don't have a lot of what ifs because I just do it, and if I fail, whatever, I'm going to try it, and I won't have to wonder the what if. And then my mentor during dental school said something that was really key to the way I practice, and it's kind of like you were saying about not cheapening a product. He always said, well, Shahida, if you don't hold yourself to the highest standard, who in private practice, like as a dentist, will be standing over your shoulder to check your work? Mm-hmm. And so I hold myself to that standard on everything I do.
Yep.
So,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
What about you, Nate?
The one that stuck with me the longest, and it's with everything I do in life and in job, pretty much anything, this is always kind of at the core, was my dad said this to me when I was real little, so I'm going to be paraphrasing. This is exactly what he said, because I'm sure it was a longer conversation. But to make sure you listen and observe before you make a decision or a statement. So like with everything with my life, I always try to make sure like I'm listening to what other people's needs are, observing what the situation is, reading the situation before I do anything, to make sure that like I'm literally doing, like if you want to go with film, make sure I'm literally doing what's best for everybody's schedule, or like listening to other people's ideas and making sure I'm making the best decision for the project. And then just in general in life, when you're talking with somebody, you gotta listen and observe to make sure you're communicating with them the best way you can. So
It is called communication.
That's right.
And that's not an easy thing. Boy, it took me years and years, and I still haven't figured that all out yet. And I'm a bit of a reactive person. So, I
It's
do
such a
before I
step
think
back, yeah.
sometimes, and you got to step back. Yeah. Good, very good.
I'd say my parents would always tell me if I'm going to start something that I should finish it and do it well. I mean, there's going to be things in life that you don't always want to do, but you have to do it. Lost my thought there.
Well, you're a young business.
Yeah.
Things don't, our first year in business, we just about didn't make it in Culver's. And if I didn't have some people around me, again, my parents, my wife, pushing me and saying, Craig, somehow or another, we're going to make this thing. You do whatever it takes within the ground rules of fairness. And that's, you're in that same boat right now. And, a young business, apparently you're doing very, very well, but it isn't always that way. And sometimes you just got to do whatever it takes and try to have fun while you're doing it as well.
So I guess, well, growing up, being a musician and everything like that, my mom would always just tell me, you need to practice, spend the time, you got to put in the time, so, yeah.
What is your instrument of choice?
My primary is violin.
Really?
So I
Wonderful.
started playing when I was 5, 6 years old, then ventured out to other things, piano, and most recently percussion with, the steel drum band and everything like that, so.
Are you a concert
I
violinist?
played quite a bit on campus when I did. Yeah. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
This is a really diverse group.
It's great.
This is just this could be my moment.
I know a song.
Yeah.
This is the moment.
No, I'm not going to even go there. Just to hear from, when you said about it all being about community, it's all about a lot of things, but there's so many similarities that go on here. So I just Thank you. I've just really learned some interesting things today to think about. Again, I have two. The quick one is, it came to me when you talked about being reactive. I did get some advice early in my seminary career. Pastors cannot afford throwaway lines. And I got a million of them. I will go for the laugh or the witty comeback or the whatever. And people, we need to take time to hear one another and understand one another. And sometimes those quick responses that just roll off my tongue don't indicate that at all. They indicate that I think I'm being amusing, and that's hurtful often. And so that's recent advice that I really am trying to follow. But the best advice ever really didn't come in the form of advice. It came as a kind of a comment from my mom, and it was, "Want to borrow a jack?" There was an article in Reader's Digest a million years ago about a guy whose tire went flat, and I'll do this really fast. His tire went flat, and he got out of the car, and he's like, "Oh, great, now I have a flat tire, and I don't have a jack, and what am I going to do? I suppose I could go up to that house, and they're probably asleep already, and I'll wake them up, and they'll be all crabby, and they'll come down, and they'll yell at me, and slam the door in my face, and whatever." And he's thinking all this as he's walking over there, And the guy opens up the door. He does knock, and it takes a while, and the guy opens up the door, and before saying anything else, the man with the flat tire just says, "Keep your damn jack," and turns over. So
He talks himself into it.
Exactly. So my mama taught me, every time I would sort of, grumble about something that was going to happen, she would say, "Want to borrow a jack?" And that truly leaves me with just a very positive, not necessarily rose-colored glasses, but a very optimistic, positive, anything. Did I say damn? I did.
That's okay.
I didn't mean it.
We can redact it.
Oh, good. Redacted. Yeah. So that's just, I think I am who I am because of Want to Borrow a Jack. So.
That's fantastic.
Oh, gosh. It was so much fun that you said this to everybody else's. Well, I guess I have at least one that's kind of two, but in your mother's stories, again, it was kind of interesting. My mother's an Italian-American, never went to college, and her mother and grandmother actually started the restaurant that our family took over. So I went off to college to set up the advice I got from my mother, with the expectation that after I finished college and my illustrious career in the NFL, I was going to go back and coach football and teach history at the high school, right? And I always tell people it didn't work because the NFL didn't meet my second condition. They didn't call back. But I remember going off to college, with pretty much not knowing anything about college. There was no real college going tradition in my family, except my father did go for 2 years, and he played for Pop Warner at Temple, and then he went off to the service and so on, and never finished. So I didn't have a very good sense of what it was about, and I was recruited that way as an athlete. And the first year was really, really hard, and I almost didn't make it, that kind of thing. And I remember going home and talking to my mother and saying how hard it was, and she said, "Son, the first year is always the toughest. The first year is the toughest." So it made me feel better. I was home for the summer, and I got recharged and went back. The second year was still hard. I went home and said the same thing, and she said, "Remember I told you the first couple years were the toughest." So finally, the third year, it was, I was getting a little better, but it was pretty tough, and I couldn't wait because I knew I was going to. Well, always comes a little ritual. How did the year go, type of thing. And she said, "Well, the first 3 years are the toughest." And I said, "Mom, you keep telling me the same thing all the years." She said, "Then you're ready for my final advice." I said, "What's that?" "It all works out in the end." There's some truth to that. You worry so much about making it when you're taking on big challenges and stuff, and you can worry yourself to death, but you can sit back, it'll work out, that kind of thing. So that's mine.
Yeah.
Do you want one more question?
If you want to wrap it up, or wherever you're at.
I have one more question.
Oh, good.
The final question.
Well, I hope it's good. Now I've sort of built it up. So, something that you said, about failure and that failure is instructive or whatever. I was thinking, I was going to ask the question, like, what would you do differently? And I thought, no, because that's sort of negative, right? Like, that something wasn't helpful. What would you do the same, right? We've all had some longer paths than others, right? Nate's path is just starting. And what are some of the things that you've done that you think have really, this was the right path. This was the right thing to do. I would do this just the same way, or I would have this same attitude, or I would have made this same decision. What would you do the same? I don't know what my own answer would be to that question. But does anybody know what their answer would be to that question? What you would do this?
What I did when I did graduate from college, and I came home, and that's again back when we had the Farm Kitchen Resort, a wonderful resort, neat place, and I love the place. But again, I didn't want to stay in the restaurant business, and my dad sat me down again. He sat me down a lot, apparently.
Still sitting with Dad.
And the discussion was he was having health issues, and he said, "Son, would you take over and be the general manager of the farm kitchen?" And I told him, "No, I don't want to do that, Dad. I don't want to be you and Mom." And things have turned out okay. I'm glad I said no at that time. But eventually I did stay in the restaurant business. I did, and eventually in 1984, of course, we started Culver's, and here we are today with almost 500 restaurants and still growing and having fun. So I'm glad I said no back then. It made me say yes later on, I guess. Not sure if I answered that question, but
I think it's great because they're critical junctures, right?
Yeah, he really said yes. And his parents.
I did really say yes.
They were like, haha, we'll sit you down again.
We've seen it in a dream.
That's right.
This is how we raised our son.
What about the rest of you? What would you do the same?
Well, I spent a little bit more time than I should have, at college, but I wouldn't change it for a thing because the major that I was in actually led me to meeting my wife, so and actually in the same pageant as she was in and everything like that. So, thank you. But yeah, I mean, I would do the same thing. Yeah.
You got that on tape.
Yeah.
Actually, I should lead on that because I was just thinking about what I would say was the same. I was originally going to go to Madison because my high school sweetheart went there. So I was going to transfer from Oshkosh after my first year. But I got accepted at Madison and it just didn't feel right. Like I really liked Oshkosh. I had grown to really enjoy being there. Things were great. And then I met my husband while I was doing undergrad. We worked out at the same gym and we ended up being each other's, perfect fit. It was the perfect part of the puzzle. And I wouldn't have had that experience if I had went to Madison either. So, and I don't think I would have had the same, opportunities that I had at Oshkosh. So I'm glad I stayed.
What do you think, Sally?
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to avoid Bible quotes because so much of what I came up with came from there. Yeah. But now I get to use one anyway. I always loved the story of Abraham, who God called and Abraham went. Not knowing where, not knowing what, not knowing how, not knowing, Abraham went. And so I think the thing that I would do again is to just follow that call, even when I don't know. And I've done it 4 times in my life, where I've just had the sense that it was time to go somewhere and do something, and it wasn't always crystal clear just what that was, but it all makes sense to me. Yeah, and I'd do it again.
Right, you have to bear with me a little bit because the way that I think is I'm a little bit of a believer of things like everything that happens in your life builds up to where you're at now. So when I think, there's one moment I can pinpoint being a cause of a lot of my happiness today. And that is in high school, when I got sick of waiting for my brother to teach me guitar and I just decided to do it myself. So, because he would always tell me, he's like, yeah, I'll teach you this year. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then one day I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna start playing. And the fact that I learned guitar, which is still something that I love doing today, so that's the first thing, it brought music into my life, which I love. But I learned the instrument, and then my junior year I started a band, which some of my closest friends that I still have today. And then with those friends, we decided to start making videos together, and then I discovered my love for video, and then I decided to major in radio, TV, film, and then also with my band, that is also how I met the person that I just married. So, if you trace it all back, that one moment I would definitely make sure I did again, because it's like who I am now.
Send your brother a thank you card.
Thank you for that.
What about you?
Well, I'm going to do two, since a couple of us had two every once in a while. So I guess, so I can also get it on tape. No, I think, the best decision I ever made was to ask my wife to marry me, and the best decision she made was to say yes. No, but we met when I was 4 and she was 3 in a sandbox in the mountains of upstate New York, and it's a long story. We went our separate ways and so on, and got married in our late 20s. And that was a great decision. And that, if you make a decision to have a lifelong partner, I think I always tell our students, making good decisions, you were saying before, is so important. If the one thing I hope Oshkosh does as well or better than any other institutions is help us make good decisions, help our students make good decisions. It's so important. And there's some decisions that are really fundamental that a lot of stuff springs from, And when trying to recruit students to Oshkosh, I talk to the parents and say, if I could prove to you that if you come to Oshkosh, your son or daughter is 4 or 5 times more likely to make a good decision about a lifelong partner, would you come? They say, she's coming now, or he's coming now. I think parents, because you really want your children, if you have children, right? You really want your children to be successful and be happy. That's what a successful child is, a happy child, right? Whether they're adult children or not. And so it's very important to make a good decision there on who your lifelong partner is, because it sets a tone for how you grow, and if you make a decision, the lifelong partner that wants to grow together with you, that's really important. Because people that don't want to grow or don't want to grow together, one wants to grow separately or one doesn't want to just stay put, that type of thing, it makes it hard, that kind of thing. So to me, that was a really good decision, and I'm still learning. I learn a lot from my wife, trust me, she teaches me a lot. And then I guess the other thing, Tracy, and I look at you because I'm assuming you would say that maybe one of your answers would be deciding to be a college professor. Yeah. That was such a good decision for me. It's been so rewarding and so fulfilling. I mean, even though I taught as a professor for about 18 years and several thousand students. It's different kind of institutions. You always are a professor, and when you as a chair, or as a dean, or as a chancellor, the faculty are my students. No, they don't like to hear that, but really, that was just for me. That was wonderful because you get so much. When you try to you do research, and that's very fulfilling to get a publication and contribute to the knowledge base. But when you learn from your teaching, when you teach, you learn material better, not just because you're imparting the knowledge, but you're learning from your students as they're receiving it and they're questioning you, or they give you an insight. I never realized that's really what that meant. I think that's been the best decision I made, outside of getting my wife to marry me.
I would agree with both of those things, actually, because what I was going to say to answer my own question, was the most important thing that I would keep the same as Todd, right? Our 14th anniversary was yesterday, and I was just thinking, I was like, wow, so much of who I am in my life and what I love to do and everything that I love is really connected to this guy. And if that hadn't been the right decision, then you could have had a very different life. But I would also say, obviously being a college professor, this is the best job ever. It's truly the best job ever. But for me, like the one thing that I was so scared to do, and I'm so glad I did, like that moment you sat down with the guitar, is the moment small town Minnesota girl who was the first generation college student said, I think I want to study abroad. And my parents, they didn't, obviously hadn't really any college experience, had never been really they don't go anywhere really ever. And so I said, I'm going to study abroad in Austria, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to be there for, more than, like a year. I didn't end up staying for a year. But I remember that it set me on the same path. Nate, when you were talking, like one decision sort of clicks along, that I went there to study German. I wanted to be a German professor. I knew I wanted to be a professor of something. Wanted to be a German professor, so I went there to learn German. Got hooked up with this internship, somebody who does international law and human rights and all this stuff. Went to this academic conference that I had no business being at. I was sort of brought along as her intern, and just was fascinated by politics and human rights and international law and all these things that were part of her life. But if I had been too chicken to go, which I so easily could have been, I never would have come to this sort of field, this discipline that I'm so passionate about. And that just led to a whole other things. I was at the university at a different time when Todd happened to be there, right? So because of that decision, it had a ripple effect throughout my entire life. And I have to do that again. There's no way that moment would be changed. So yeah, definitely that. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was so great and so easy. So easy to have a wonderful discussion.